Shoot, dude, let's talk about TGC for a minute. If you
Sure.
how's the decompressing? Like we've done events, we do events. How's the decompression time been now that it's done and over?
A weight off the shoulders is very, very good. I'll put it that way. But I have my marketing team, Nathan and Ken, who, kind of help coordinate the whole thing. They're coming next week. So we're actually going to sit down and talk about extensive planning versus rushed planning, so more or less there'll be, offerings of a coalition, so to speak, to kind of grow it. I've had some good responses from people and, some good information. I have some haters online too. I had a guy kind of troll me the other day because I put something out there saying like, hey, instead of being captive with one carrier, perception isn't reality. And he's like, well, good to see you're finally not doing your non-recruiting meeting, posts and this and that. And we went back and forth, and then magically that post and that person disappeared. So I think it's just these bitter companies that I used to wholesale to, where some of their agents said they'd rather work with me than them. So they just try and find different ways to, get under my skin. So I can't complain. It was good.
People talk shit on what they can't have or what they're too uncommitted, undisciplined, and unwilling to follow through on. Like they will talk crap on what they can't have. They could have it, but they don't have it. And so instead they talk crap. So
yeah, it was great. I mean, all things considered, very happy with the outcome, very happy with the opportunity to meet new friends, meet friends in person, so it was really good to see you guys and kind of connect on a deeper level. So, I don't want to say out of commission, in regards to communication. It's just been recouping on everything, my life in general. My kids just left school for the summer. And so we have all that going too. So yeah, it's been crazy, but a lot of good stuff happening. My business partner, Roderick, has told me that there's a lot of stuff going on. We have like an NIL agency that we put together. He was presenting there, and some cool stuff happened with that. So we'll see where that goes. It's always fun to talk about sports. So
dude, I thought it was a good time. I thought it was a great event. Your team, Nathan, Ken, did a great job. Like, yeah, I thought it was a very well done event. And on the recruiting side, I don't think, other than those one people that weren't even part of your organization, you had to kind of go kick them out.
walk them out.
Anybody recruiting at that whole event. So
Exactly. And it was funny because, so yeah, my back office is 3Mark. And he was trolling through because he's part of Experior, and he was messaging some of the people in his group saying, does anyone know the compensation structure for 3Mark? Can anyone get that to me? And I was just like, great. He's trying to troll people. But, I tell everyone all the time that this isn't slavery. You can leave anytime. There are no hard feelings. It's business. So if your story's better somewhere else, then I will concede, and let you move on your merry way. It's not something that I take offense to. It's just business. So, but some people take that very offensively. The stories of the MLM groups calling it a family, when I found anytime someone calls it family, it's just a mentality of manipulation. So if you're going back on the family, people start to get all prickly with stuff like that. So I try to stay away or deter words like that because I don't want to be the same.
yeah, dude. So, and Peter, feel free to jump in anywhere here. Let's rewind. Like you're now at this point, you've got Valor, you're putting on conferences with hundreds of people there. You're doing all this cool stuff. But before that, you were a lowly wholesaler. And before that, you were a tween or a twink or something. Wow. I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but no, how did you get into insurance? What was your time like as a wholesaler? What led you there? What'd you learn? What'd you love and hate? And kind of like what led you to where you are now?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I went to school, so I was a pretty good kid in school, like high school, A's or B's, I did athletics and stuff like that. Had a good time. But when I transitioned over to college, it was more or less the first college I went to was more of a, being away from the family, having the freedoms and stuff like that. I didn't drink a lot. I was just that loser who played video games a lot. And, I got my first
Newfound freedom.
I did. And it was great. Freshman 30. No, I beat that. I got the freshman 15. I beat it with their freshman 30. And
I was a freshman at 50.
oh, sweet Jesus. So it was it was definitely one of those things where I was like, I gotta fix this. So I went home, tail tucked between my legs, stayed at home for a few years, went to community college, built up the rapport, and then went to school down in southern Pennsylvania, York College. And it was interesting because I had to buy a car to commute back, from Connecticut down, not daily, but, in general. So I had to buy a car, and my major was sport management, and I couldn't network because in sport management, the whole thing is network, network, network. I had to pay bills, so I worked full time. So I was a full time student and I worked full time at, Circuit City. May they rest in peace. Yeah, 4.5 years at Circuit City. The accolades are just amazing. So I was the number one salesperson in York, Pennsylvania. After college was over, they promoted me. So I got my first commission and salary based position. I became the tech manager in Golden Ring, Maryland, which is just north of Baltimore. I'll put it this way, there were bars over the windows and a guard at the front. So definitely a different experience, but it was an experience. I took the worst store out of 15, turned it into the best store. But I loved talking with people. I loved communicating, finding opportunities to, help them out. But, it was interesting because I was kind of getting homesick. My wife and I, she graduated in May of '06 or '05, something like that. And we just got homesick. So we went back home. I transferred to Enfield, Connecticut store that was just opening. And I just got tired of the Rigamaroo, Black Fridays, Memorial Day.
Bye.
Rigamaroo.
What the heck is
You
a
never heard of that? You never heard of that?
Rigamaroo for sure?
Is it Rigamaroo? I don't know. I'm a dumb hockey player.
Right. Let's
So
make a note here.
That's getting added to the shirts to make list.
Rigamaroo, Rigamaroo. All right.
Rigamaroo now.
All right. The more you know. So I got tired of the Black Fridays, working when everyone was having fun and stuff like that. So I basically called up a buddy and I said, "Hey, are there any jobs in MetLife?" And he said, "Well, do you know what an annuity is?" I said, "No." He goes, "Perfect, you're hired." And I started working in the call center for the annuity department, formerly a Travelers business, because MetLife acquired Travelers, and paid my dues there. You have to stay there for a year before you can get a job. And I applied for a job with 2 weeks left of my year as a wholesaler, which I thought was an annuity wholesaler. Didn't read the fine print. It was life wholesaler. And I got in. And we were the last hires for about 2 to 3 years because of the financial crisis and everything else. It was be happy that you have a job. I worked with 2 regional VPs, one in Dallas and one in Iowa. And they both sucked. I mean, I loved to death, but they both sucked. So I didn't make a lot of money there. It was a learning process. Plus, we were selling whole life when IULs were non-existent. It was GULs. And when you sell to financial advisors who want the cheapest thing so they can keep more assets under management, the Hartford, Lincoln were dirt cheap, and we were not. So you learn stories, you learn concepts, and I thought I was going to stay in that life for my life. I'm very loyal. And they decided to move to Charlotte. And I said, it doesn't feel right. We visited, we saw the area, just didn't feel right. So they gave us 6 months to find a new job. And I did down here in Nashville, Tennessee with AIG. Started out as a career internal GA. So when the career group couldn't sell their product, they'd come to my team. And then after that, what happened was they actually all got let go in 2016. And so I was moved to a desk position as a manager, and then eventually as a regional vice president over with their other product line, the Quality of Life product, and got to work with independent agents all across the country. Realized that I like being closer to the sale than just a product pusher, because I always thought, give people value and they'll keep coming back. But there was just some things that kind of got in the way. So I was very passionate about my position. I got like a regional VP award there for best VP there and one over there. But the problem is you're only as good as what the product they give you to deliver is and with the compensation. And my biggest account was a multi-level marketing group, and we were their first flagship product. I trained a lot of them in the beginning, and a lot of them would thank me. They'd say, "Phil, thank you so much for making us number one in AIG and helping us become number one in the other providers we have too." I was like, but they shifted their entire product to another company that advised that they were going to give the senior person, pay his bills, buy his house, or all this other, perks and whatever. And I was sitting there with a $37 million goal and no production coming in. And I said, screw it. This makes no sense. I know more than most of the agents I talk to, not to be cocky about it, but you've been in it long enough. And I know, it sounds bad to say, but call a spade a spade. And basically I said, I'm going to start exploring this idea of going, independent. But it wasn't until I went and visited one of my customers, Roderick, down in Atlanta. We were at a Braves game, sitting Roderick Sr.'s over here. His son, Roderick II, is here. And I'm in the middle of nowhere. He's like, what would it take for you to come work with me? And I was just like, flabbergasted, because he wanted to start building distribution. He knows what I can do. And, we created a strategic partnership. And then July 1st of 22, I put my 2-week notice in at AIG, now Corbridge, and started working independently. So it's been a wild ride since, done a lot of pretty cool cases, done a lot of cool stuff, visited a lot of cool places, but I would never go back to internal. There's just too much bureaucracy. When that group left, and I said to my guys, is like, yeah, give me some kind of guarantee here, because I'm busting my keister, doing everything possible. And they said, well, it's a commission-based position. You got to roll with the punches and suck it up. I was like, so I got dinged on this side and dinged on that side. So it just, all the bureaucracy and stuff like that of corporate just made me say, I'm done with this crap, and moved out.
Dude, there's a lot to unpack there.
We didn't realize Corbridge and AIG were the same company.
Yeah, so ironically, I was with MetLife when MetLife separated and became MetLife and Bright House. I left. Same thing. AIG seemed to follow suit with what MetLife was doing. MetLife fought the government to take the SIFI designation off. They fought them, and then they won. And AIG's like, can we do that too? They're like, sure. So then they did that to become more nimble. So AIG said, you know what, we're going to sell our life and retirement distribution and have it create its own deal, which is Corbridge. But they still sell American General products. It's just a different wrapper. So at the end of the day, it's still the same thing, just a different name.
Interesting.
So I have to say, the only other time, and I'm young and dumb, I haven't met everybody, but I've only ever seen the name Roderick once, other than your partner. Any guess?
Pick me. Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Have you seen the movie, Phil? No. Roderick is...
That was all I could think about when he said...
He is the star in that movie, that book. He's the star of a band called Loaded Diaper. And maybe you just buy maybe you buy your Roderick, the book, and just...
A Loaded Diaper shirt.
Loaded Diaper. I'll bring him a loaded diaper.
Yeah.
If it was loaded with money, he'd take it. But
it depends on if you have OnlyFans or not. Put it up there. No, so you mentioned like the bureaucracy, and most of the people that are going to listen to or watch this podcast are on the distribution side, right? They're field agents, field agencies. And I think one of the biggest things we really try and push agents to do is get to know your underwriters, get to know your case managers, get to know your wholesalers, and build relationships, understand their problems, and because those are the ones pushing your business through. Those are the ones, like your wholesaler, when you need that exception on XYZ, your wholesaler is the one that will go to freaking bat to make it happen. But it's pretty hard to be empathetic and build relationships, because these agents, they just don't understand what goes on at the home office side of things. There's always just this excuse like, oh, it's a bunch of know-nothing call center employees. And that's not the case. There are certainly some know-nothing call center employees, but there's an entire field of experts that are just drugged down with the red tape. And could you maybe take a minute and just kind of paint the picture for agents and help agents understand who is it they should get to know at a carrier home office, and what challenges are those people facing in those positions?
Yeah, that's a great question. COVID kind of flipped everything around. In the past, if you worked with like two types of distribution, right? You are part of a BGA, and the BGA has their account reps. And so people have to go to the account reps. And in my opinion, I hate that, just to be honest. I hate to say, like Carson, you have 30 carriers at your fingertips. So I have 30 carriers at my fingertips. But if I have a question about Nationwide, Transamerica, Mutual of Omaha, or whoever, I do. I can't go to the RVP. I can't go to the internal, because they want to make sure they retain their jobs. So there's IMOs like that. I'm not a big fan of those ones. So the reason why I like mine is because they say, here's a list of RVPs and identity. So when you talk about stuff like that, the big march over the last 5 years with insurance companies is basically stating that BGAs are dead, to the extent that a lot of them are the, crusty old white guys, 60 plus years old with no legacy plan. No one wants to continue the business. It's going to die with them. Fast forward, you see these multi-level marketing groups and other organizations like MGAs that have 4 or 5 carriers, direct relationships. So they have their external, their internal, and things like that, and a more intimate relationship. And when you have stuff like that, I would say first and foremost, they're dying to do trainings for organizations and people. We had metrics after COVID because I still couldn't travel. I had to do 10 webinars a week. So, it didn't have to always be a group. It could be 2, 5 people, whatever. But we had to do webinars to get an internal credit, to get a bogey for activity. Internal wholesalers typically have to do that. So if you are looking for people to train your people on a specific product suite or whatever, get to know the internals very well, see if they can do a regimented sales training and stuff like that, because they need it too. Then on the flip side is that your RVP is the major relationship between the account and the insurance company. So typically RVPs talk to the Carson Porter, they don't talk to the Phil Resch. But it depends on the relationship. So oftentimes if there's a fire drill, I would go to Carson and I would say, Carson, I need this pushed through. Carson would then go to RVP and say, make this happen for my guy. And then they would go to bat for you at the insurance company. So what happens is it's kind of like a tandem team. Most of the RVPs don't really do typical training. They're more of the guys who come in, shake hands, or gals, shake hands, give product updates and things like that. If you deal with some more non-traditional companies, not like a Pru or a Lincoln that just talk about underwriting, stuff like that, like a North American, Anika back in the day before they exited the life space. But, companies like that, they had more of a deeper relationship with their organizations. So it got a little bit more intimate. But that would be 2 key relationships. The other would be is if they do have a case manager assigned specifically to the organization, I would as an internal and an external, I would send, not flowers. I would send like food, Starbucks gift cards, stuff like that to the internal or to the case managers, because when I call them, I want them to pick up and not send me right to voicemail. So an action like that goes farther than a lot of things. You shoot the breeze with the case managers every once in a while, and next thing you know, you have a friend for life. So that's, a lot of people don't realize it's the soft skills that help you get a lot farther. And me just getting to know my case managers, a couple underwriters that I liked, really helped out in the process in regards to if I needed a phone call like the bat phone, that they were there to help me immediately. So that's some key people that I would say are worth talking to. On the flip side, you have things, for example, sake, that take a lot of time. Is say there's something wrong with the website, something wrong with commission sheets or whatever, that might actually run into a quarterly fix because IT does quarterly batches and they did a core bridge. So if there's something that needs to be adjusted and it's broken, it might take 3-4 months to get it done if it makes it to the next update. So what happens is when you talk to carriers about updates, products, and solutions, good example, I went to Columbus 2 years ago and talked to their top dog. And I was like, you guys have a great story, great product. What I would say is could you do a little better with the LERP strategy, high cash and this and that? He's like, yeah, we're coming out with a product probably by October of this year, October 23. They still don't have it. So the thing is that's what happens is there's things that will shift it down and then other stuff will take its place, and fire alarms or AG49 revise comes in and they have to fix their whole portfolios and stuff like that. So all that stuff happens and people think that these insurance companies should be nimble and fix it like that, because you could call someone and be like, hey, fix this. And they're like, okay, it doesn't work that way. It goes in a queue and they have all these projects that they're working on. So infrastructure, depending on the size and scope of the company, can be their biggest Achilles heel.
Interesting. What do you think for an agent if they were picking a quality company on the life and annuity side, because that's every time an agent's looking at aligning, all they're looking at is like the number one thing is commission, right? Yes, you need to get paid for what you do, but
Mhm.
it's crazy to see so many agents go align with a company that's going to pay top commissions, and then you look at the suite of products or companies behind them, and they're not
Mhm.
quality, and you end up losing half of it out the back end, and so then you got to go work for that same dollar a second time. And what would you say to agents? Like, how can they recognize quality companies that have good support structures, good systems that, yeah, they're not going to be American Gladiator nimble, but they don't also have to have the reflexes of a dead cow either, right?
Right.
They're responsive to field distribution inputs as best as possible. How do you find good companies to work with?
Well, part of it is, so when you think about it, there's so many carriers, there's so many different niches, however you want to say it. And
Don't worry about how you pronounce stuff. Just any cares. So just as Cheers Imperator decided to throw out some words.
hate you, man. So what I look at are a few things: the rate integrity of the IUL business. So I do a lot of IUL. Are they maintaining a decent S&P cap rate? Time in and time out. There's very few carriers in that ballpark. So Corebridge is one, Mutual of Omaha, Columbus. Those are the top three I could think of for that. I tell people all the time, I had 11 1099s last year because right product for right client might not be the same. So like everyone is gaga for National Life Group. And it's just because they had a windfall when COVID hit and they increased their non-med and went to town. And now they're the number one IUL because everyone has familiarity with them. Doesn't make them the best, because the Pace Center index strategy is a turd, but so I actually look at integrity of the S&P 500, easier to track, easier to follow, and good history. So when you look at stuff like that, that's the biggest thing for me is who has a cost-efficient product, who has a streamlined process, and who's going to be there when I need them the most. And so I have a core 5 carriers that I usually go with: Corebridge, NLG for the foreign nationals, North American because they have another living benefit term that's competitive with QOL, Symetra. So Symetra has a streamlined process, very cost-efficient IUL and protection IUL, which I guess some people still don't realize there's protection IULs. They all get like all chompy at the bit because there's no cash. And like the first 10 years is like, that's not the objective. Anyway, side story. And then what I would say is that, my 5th one would be Columbus, if I didn't say them already. So, and that's because once again, they'll bend over backwards for you. They'll listen to you. They'll really be there. And, so I can get about 95% of my clients with those 5 carriers. And, because of the relationships that I can develop through my back office, dealing with them directly, it makes it a lot easier for communication and growth and the agents that I work with, talk to the internals. So, it's a great cohesive relationship. And so that's why I like those guys. Doesn't mean I got beef with Mutual of Omaha, Assurity, Lafayette, Mass Mutual, Prue, Hancock, Lincoln. The other thing is that if you want to build distribution, then you want the companies to pay your downlines versus you, so they own the business. Those companies I mentioned allow for you to have sub-level agents and you can pay them as they progress and grow. So it's a combination of the two. Once you're proficient enough, you can then start doing things like Prudential and Lincoln and Hancock and adding those for different reasons. But I usually don't add those carriers to people's portfolio until, they're proficient enough.
Yeah, get off the ground. I like that.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So now you're in this place in your career where you're stacking on hundreds of it. You've got hundreds of agents at this point.
Mhm.
And it's awesome how rapidly you guys are growing and some of the good things you're doing. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing your agents have? Like, do you ever have those times, and you do as a parent, when you're just like, damn it, child, if you would have just, then you wouldn't have,
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are some of those moments with your agents? Because you've got a pretty good sample size now. And what do you wish more agents either knew ahead of time, or like it just sunk in and they prioritized it, or what?
That's the thing right there, is prioritization. Because the biggest frustration that I found is that everyone is trying to chase a dollar. So if one of my agents handed you a business card, it might say Phil Resch, notary, insurance, wills and trusts, real estate, solar panels, and all this other stuff. It's like, are you the guy in New York where they open up the vest and you got the glasses on one side and the watches on the other? Like, what do you do? And so our industry, because it's so lucrative, people get in it and then they realize it's so freaking hard to talk to clients. There's a reason why the commissions are so good. It's because it's the toughest thing to sell, in my opinion. And so people will start to build something different while remembering they have a life insurance license, and all of a sudden they lose focus. So if you have that concentrated effort, like I think there was something about, I'm going to butcher it, but Kobe Bryant had a story about concentrated practice, where if you just focus on something, you will, for I think it's like 20 minutes, just concentrated focus, you will improve immensely and beat your competition. But so many people in our industry must have like ADHD or something, because they'll start a project and then they won't finish it. And then they'll start something different because it's exciting to start something. Well, they could have made money over here if they just kept watering the plant, so to speak. But they
Out syndrome.
Exactly. So, I tell people all the time, Valor has, I call it a spider web of opportunity, because we have silos for life annuity, DI, long-term care, ACA, Medicare, group life and group health, and then alternative investments. But I tell everybody, like, because let's say, Carson, you're already set with the life stuff. Peter, you're set with the health stuff. Maybe I can partner with you guys on the opposite in that collaboration attempt to say, hey, we can still work together. But some people, when they first get on, I'll tell them, I'm like, let's focus on one, get you set to master it, and then move on from there. And they just want to go in and talk to everybody, and it's just that verbal diarrhea. So the biggest thing that I would say for people is stay focused, make a game plan, stick with it for 6 months. And if the game plan doesn't work, then adjust from there, or seek a mentor or someone who can help you figure out a better, I guess you'd say, battle plan. Because there's so many different ways you can go about it, but you got to have an approach. It took me, again, Circuit City being the top tech guy, it took me about 4 months to get familiar with the product, familiar with talking to people, and then just developing my pitch. So this didn't work for that person, I'll try this. If this works, good. If I get a rebuttal from that, what's my rebuttal? And then all of a sudden it becomes a pitch and a story. And the beauty of our industry, and the hard part about our industry, is 18 plus years of doing this, not one client has ever been the same. So, you're always going to run into those situations where you're always learning something new, which is a great thing. It keeps you nimble. But for people who lose focus, they're out and then they just want you to sell it and make all the money. And I don't play that way.
I've found there's really only 3 reasons why you don't see success in this industry. And it like there's a million reasons why you might be up against one of those 3 reasons.
Yeah.
But there's really only 3 reasons. And it's just that you're either not doing the right stuff, your activity level on a daily basis, your daily activity level at doing the right things is not high enough. And number 3 is that you just haven't done it long enough. Like, I was talking to a dude this morning who wants to start knocking doors. I had my first $1 million a year knocking doors, right? And I had a team of door knockers, and so we're going through stuff. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, you need to hit 100 doors a day. And we're doing all the things. That's your bare minimum. And he's like, okay. And then 2 weeks from now, if I don't see him, I'm like, no. Like 4 to 6 weeks is a bare minimum before we even start tweaking. And that's not like, hey, we're going to go do something else. That's before we start tweaking, but we need a large enough sample size. He's like, well, in a month, that's, call it 20 working days. If I knock 100, that's 2,000 doors before I make any tweaks. I'm like, yeah, because your first 1,874 of them, you're going to freaking suck at it. But you've got to do the right thing enough times per day for long enough and just keep rolling. And if you do that, like, you will. Does that mean everybody should go knock doors? No, absolutely not. But if that was your thing, you need to hit those 3. Like, those are the 3 simplest ways to see if did you actually give it the required amount of effort, right?
Yep.
Bears, right? Bears is the 4th reason.
I'm pretty sure I said it was 3.
Bears?
I heard bears.
Oh my gosh, that was hilarious. He's talking about your buddy at TGC. Wait, did I not tell you that?
No.
The Bears
That's hilarious.
story?
No.
Dude, we were talking about something. He's like, how's Idaho? And I was like, oh, it's good and it's bad. And he's like, what's the worst thing? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but you know what? It's not like, living in some parts of the world where you have to wake up and be worry about being eaten by a lion or something like that when you take a pee at 3 a.m. And he didn't hear me correctly. And he's like, there's lions? I was like, well, yeah, mountain lions, but honestly, you don't have to worry too much about those. It's the bears you need to be concerned about. He's like, there's bears?
Oh my.
He was just wide-eyed and just losing his crap. It was
I think I know who that is too, and I'm not gonna. Is it the same guy I made fun of about? I don't want to say it because it's being recorded, but remember I was making fun of a certain group, and he was there, and I was like, at least they're not this. And he's like, what the hell, man?
it was not,
I was not that guy. Oh, okay.
no.
Okay.
I remember that story. Not that guy.
I'm trying to be as PC as possible because
I will tell you who it was after this, but you'll know exactly who it was. I think he peed his pants a little bit. He was laughing so hard. Sorry. He was so concerned.
Bears.
But anyways, Peter, for derailing us, get us back on track.
Bears.
So the Bears. No, so I think that one of the things that you mentioned kind of in passing really is the big thing that our industry is missing is mentorship. I think that when, look, at the end of the day, obviously you have to do the work, right?
Yep.
I can't want it more than you want it. You gotta get out and do it. But I think, well, I know that is the only reason that I ended up being a successful agent was I had a fantastic mentor that brought me into the business. I could not have paid for a better mentor. The guy that brought me into the business was if a national president. Like Cliff testified to Congress on behalf of the insurance and financial services industry during the Frank Dodd stuff. Like, to say he's the GOAT would be putting it mildly, right? Cliff's the dude. And so I got a huge head start just because I had somebody that, I got to share an office with him for 6 years. And when I had questions, I would walk down the hallway and just ask, like, hey man, how do you do this and this? Like my own little personal Google, right? When I started, probably my first 40 appointments, Cliff went on with me, and I was a captive multi-line agent. Was he getting overrides? Yes. Was he putting in more effort than what that override was giving him? Also, yes, absolutely. He brought me he also didn't take his responsibility lightly, that he understood when he recruited people into the industry that he was going to disrupt their life and their family's life. So he put me through 9 interviews before he offered me a position. I had to bring my wife on one of the appointments or on one of the interviews. To say Cliff was thorough would be putting it lightly, right? And so you've got Cliff all the way on one side of the equation, and on the other side of the equation, you got the fog and mirror test, where it's like, hey, can you do this? No, great, you're in. Let's go, right? And there needs to be some balance in the industry for sure, but where there should not be any balance is if I could replicate for every new person that wanted to come into the business my experience with Cliff, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would spend one of my 3 wishes with the genie to make that happen, because I think it's important enough. It really is important enough to do. And it's, that's like, Cody Askin's group, the 8% Nation. You know why it's called that?
Why?
Because 92% of new agents fail out of our business.
Terrible.
92%. And why is that? Because there's no mentorship. There's no, the industry, by and large, we need an man. We need somebody, when somebody comes in and goes, hey, I want to sell insurance, and they talk to them, they go, no, man, I don't think this is the right industry for you. Sorry.
I know somebody down at the factory. Let me get you an interview.
Well, that's the issue that you run into now is you have the BGA model where, and I love this guy to death, but his story is, I'll give you the best comp. No one will beat my comp, but you're on your own. Or you've got on the other side of the coin, I recruit Carson in and here's my thumb over him for the next, forever. And I'm going to get overrides and all this other stuff. But, if you dare ask someone else for help, I'll get insulted. And, maybe I'm not doing anything because the visions of grandeur and the idea of not having to work, but just having this passive income come in is the reason why I got in the business. And I'm going to make other people do all their work so I can get money and not help them. That's what's going on in the industry. There's not enough younger mentors who are taking this to the extent of what people like Cliff would do, because the career agencies are dying. There are very few left, if any. And if they are, they're usually mutual companies. And the fact of the matter is that, and I'm talking on the life side, so I'm not a PNC guy, but you're running into issues where people are looking for help they're looking to escape a life that they're currently in. Someone comes along and says, I've got this awesome car, but they don't tell you they're going to an apartment at night, and stuff like that. It's all visions of progression and growth without, any substance behind it. And these people come in, they do case splits. They're only making 25 or 30%, but this person is cutting 50-50 split because their time is valuable and all this other stuff. How motivating is that for people getting in the industry? It's not. So you're losing all your quote unquote easy sales, the direct people that to someone else who's quote unquote helping you. And then when you
Phil, you just need to bring in 10 people to the business, and then they bring in 10. They bring in 10.
Listen, it's not a pyramid scheme.
No,
Okay.
It's
just triangle.
It's a triangle. It's a triangle plan, not a pyramid scheme. It's a triangle plan.
I always love hearing every place is a MLM. I was like, no, it's not, because I'm not looking to say recruit Carson to recruit Peter to recruit someone else. I'm looking to recruit Carson so Carson can help his community. And then if Carson wants to become his own agency, we can work on developing him to become his own agency. But it's not designed to say bring in a bunch of people with a recruiter first mentality. So when people start saying, well, every corporation is an MLM, it's an absolute lie. But people are being told that so that they can defend what they're currently in. And it's disgusting. So, call it what it is.
I can see aspects. There are aspects of like, hey, I get it. Nothing happens without a sale, right? The guy at the sales counter makes some money, and because he made some money, his manager made some money, and their manager all the way up to the top of the owner. I get that.
Yep.
Similar but different.
I think though, on the flip side of that coin, the industry needs organizations like that are recruiting heavy, because our industry is dying out. Our industry is aging out, and those organizations are better at bringing on new people and bringing new people into the business than anyone else. So the question becomes not what's like undoubtedly the MLM structure is undoubtedly better bringing new people into the business and getting them licensed and going from there, right? The more traditional agency model is undoubtedly better at keeping people in the business and growing them through the business without having to recruit. You can do it through production. So the question becomes, what's the happy medium? How do you, and Phil, I think that's kind of what Valor's working on, right? Is how do you supply an agency type experience without losing the bandwidth that an organization can have for growth and bringing people.
The big thing that I always felt was important was, you give people the right service, you give people the right compensation, and they'll stick around, So my thing is that I do 2 trainings a week, Wednesday nights for the part-timers, call it Back to Basics, where people can come in, just ask me any questions they want, and we'll just go through and just see what people want to do. And then Thursday afternoons at 4:00 Central, I do a formal training for sales ideas and carriers. Like Patrick Kohlberg is talking, in an hour about life settlements. So, we've got 2 different places to meet people, the full professional or the part-timer. And then all of them are uploaded to my YouTube free, so anybody can watch them. But the big thing is that it boils down to what I would consider a hybrid model. And what's funny is some people online are calling like Experior, Vantage, and other MLMs hybrid models, and they're not. I mean, most of them are designed to be recruiter first, production second. Yes, those 2 are, closer to versus a HP, an HDI, Wolf Financial Group, or companies like that. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to push first? Recruiting or production?
So tagged Peter and I on the other day. Ask about American National. She was an Experior gal.
I know. And that's why I say, like, these guys, you lift a stone and there's Experior reps. It's like, I have no problem with Jamie, but some of the people in his organization anyway. So, from the standpoint there has to be a happy medium. So like for us, what we have is a hybrid model that's independent, where people will get paid directly by the carrier on your book of business, no fees, no startups, none of that crap, no fees to get new carriers. If you hit 3 million in annual production for yourself or your organization, you're at my level and I make no money on you. My goal is to try and get people to that level. So we create a Knights of the Round Table kind of thing, where we can demand higher scope. That's the independent side. And Carson, obviously you're on the other side of what we're building right now, which is more of an MLM type structure, a builder type model. We're calling it an affinity group that has the exact same stuff that I talk about with my side, only more structure and actual played out generational legs. So comps are lower, but people who like that builder mentality but still own their book, don't pay for anything but, the CRM system at $50 a month. It's something that they may enjoy more than the truly independent side. But I like to say, I'll meet you in the middle where you want to go and I'll figure it out. Because the fact of the matter is you're still going to get the training and support from me with the 18 plus years of experience, and I'll help you uncover opportunities that you didn't even know you had and progress and grow. So, I tell people where I make my money is doing joint casework on higher cases. So one guy, he was going to put a $10 million case in for estate planning. I said, why don't you let me talk to the customer and see what we can do? 10 turned into 35 million. And, so stuff like that is where I can help, because of the partnership, but I still don't do like a 50-50 split if someone's in my organization and I'm doing point of sale. Because I know I'm getting spread or override, I'll just say 30 and 70 is theirs, which I think is way more fair than what you'll ever see in most of the industry, especially for larger cases. So, and it's all about doing what's right for the customer. So at the end of the day, the case that we had for the 35 million wasn't the top company. Like everyone sells Allianz for LERPs because they have the highest targets. I don't sell Allianz unless it's an annual pay because they don't have 12 sweep dates. They only have one. So if you're paying monthly, all that money is going into the penalty box for the fixed account until next year. I'm not playing that. So yeah, the more you know. So there's different reasons to pick different carriers, but because people will see Allianz and F&G at the top of the income sheets, well, if you flip it and do S&P only, they drop to like 7th or 8th. So it's just amazing what proprietary indexes can do, and having that education and understanding. But the problem is companies, and I know this because I got buddies who work at F&G, they're buying organizations. They're buying portions of organizations, so they're the lead dog, and people will push them more than the other carriers. So, you're not getting the full truth. And that's the problem, is people are getting incentivized by insurance companies to earn more business. And I never played that way. I don't want to play that way because that's not fair.
Can't play no shit.
Exactly. So, but it's out there. You'll see it all the time. And people love that soft money or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's just kind of wrapping up here? What's next for you? What's the next big project? You just racked up TGC. You got Valor with hundreds of agents. You're building out a side that people can come and do a builder model as an MLM or a traditional agency model. You've got all this going on. I know you were talking about you're going to do TGC again, but you want a further horizon, not trying to put it together in 3 to 6 months. So what's next on your plate?
The big things that I would say are on my plate is a couple things. So technology, really taking advantage of the technologies that we have, like Annuities Genius and Insight, but incorporating that into the back office suite that's more robust. So part of me being a tech nerd is I want to enhance the story of, the back office and ultimately kind of take some of the intel that I have and put it into learning management system on my own site too, for people to kind of feel more elite that they have that, as opposed to just Johnny Everyman.
Right.
So that's the tech side. The marketing side, what we're doing is we're going to do a lot more lunch and learns. What we basically are selling are lunch and learn packs. So costs about $3,000 to do a lunch and learn. So we help agents on the marketing side. Instead of you paying $3,000 up front, we have a marketing system. It's about $1,250 a month, but it gives you a full CRM. It gives you, agents to, cold call if you want to, because there's like 2.7 million in the industry. We'll do 2 events for the customer, whether you want them to be client facing or agent recruiting. And instead of paying $3,000 per event, it's just part of the fee, so you don't have to come up with that at once. And then, you get this too. So, and higher comps, but we're pushing a marketing platform plan like that. And then lastly, really, it's trying to focus more on the work-life balance. So bringing it back to why do I do all this? I did a lot of travel in the first 5 months. So I'm going to let the dust cool for a little bit. I've got one trip that I'm taking with my dad. We're going to Germany in end of September. And it's a cool thing because my uncle and my grandfather went back in the day to meet the original Resches. And now my uncle wants to do it with my dad, and they asked if I want to come too. So it's kind of that passing on thing. So I'm going to spend a couple weeks over in Germany and spend a couple days in France as well to see, like, I love history. So we're going to visit Normandy and stuff like that. So a little bit more of the personal stuff, but can I continue with everything that I got here? You know, the trainings and, you know, more marketing. So it's all fun stuff.
While you're in Normandy, you ought to reach out to Scott and see if he can tell you where that man of war stung him.
Yeah, a lot of pee on him, right?
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Well, dude, where can people find you whether they wanted to pick your brain or maybe even talk to you about what Valor can offer? Where can people get hold of you?
Easiest way is email phil@valorfs.com. So Valor with a V, ALORFS, like Frank Sam, or financialspecialist.com. My website, valorfinancialspecialist.com. My trainings, if people want to see what I've done at Valor Financial, it should be a blue circle with a gold V. And then, you know, I'm on Facebook all the time, so you can look up Philip Resch or Valor Financial Specialists, and I'll be there. So those are the easiest ways. And then we can take it from there.
And what's one thing that you're terrified people will find out about you?
I am definitely afraid of heights, like definitely afraid. And yet I fly all the time. So it would be that. And the other one would be most people, when they introduce themselves to me, I forget their name in less than a minute. So it's a lot of hey yous or guys, you know, until I hear it like 10 times and I'll still forget.
Hey, bud, champ.
What's up, guy?
Wow.
Dude.
Hey.
Hello. So that would be it.
Cool, man. Peter, anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Sweet. Phil, I appreciate you being on, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, and a fabulous day.